Welcome to We Hear Her. I am Erin Trenbeth Murray.
And I am Jennifer Bean.
We're here today with another amazing woman who's sharing her story and insights to lessons learned. Hi, I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray, and I am happy to have you here for the We Hear Her podcast for women who succeed. Today, we get to talk to Missy Larsen, who is with doTERRA. I'm going to go into her bio in just a sec. Most importantly, proud mom of 4, and we were just making connections of our alma mater at the University of Utah, and where one of her children has gone, one is there. And so I'm looking forward to talking with her about her philanthropy work, her communications work, and all the things that she has done in the community with anti-human trafficking and with refugee services, all kinds of stuff. So with that, let me just share a little bit about Missy and her background. So she is Vice President of Philanthropy and Community Impact at doTERRA International. She guides one of the world's most active corporate philanthropy operations with a mission to empower people and communities worldwide. She has done 3 decades. Missy has become recognized as a collaborative leader known for her results-focused work. Her passion is connecting resources for community building initiatives. Missy is the founder of Intrepid Communications, the co-founder of the Utah Refugee Connection, which was previously Coalition, which some of you may know. She was the founding chair of Safe UT and serves on numerous boards as a volunteer. Prior to her work at doTERRA, she served as Chief of Staff to the Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, where she led many initiatives, trainings, and task forces with a wide range of issues, including anti-human trafficking, anti-crime, safe schools, and diversity. Missy and her husband, Sam, are the proud parents of 4, and in that incredibly busy life, she was able to find time to be with us today. So thank you, Missy.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate your time.
What an awesome
I mean, you
place
got a
to be
little
today.
going on here.
Just a little.
Just a little bit in between, but napping, you know, I hear naps are at 10 and at 1.
Yeah, I wish. In the morning.
Right. Well, I first really got to hear you speak at the Executive Education Women's Leadership Certificate up at the University of Utah in the David Eccles School of Business. And you finished, and I was like, I have got to talk to that woman. Like, she is speaking my language, and there was so much that resonated with me through your conversation with the group. Yeah. Now, you've done all types of work, communications work, all over the place. Do you have one that really is like, oh, that was my favorite, that was a gem?
You know, I would have to say my current job. I love my current job because what it's done is it's taken all of my life experience and everything that I've worked very hard and long hours and everything else to really understand government, understand communications, understand education, understand nonprofit, all of those to really come into one job. And it really is this perfect place that's this place where I get to do all of it. And I love it.
Together.
All of it. It's really
all into
fun.
one. And, you know, every time that I have ran into you and I've asked how you're doing and how's work going, you've just boomed out with great authenticity that you love your work. And I thought that would be a really cool job, right? You're working for a company you believe in and you're able to give philanthropically. So maybe share with us a little bit more about your journey and what you do there.
You know, it's been interesting because it has been an interesting journey to get where I am. And it's so many times throughout my life, and I think probably you've been in the same place, where you get to a place and you have to make a leap of faith. And it's like jumping off a cliff, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to hold my breath and I'm going to make the jump. And you land and you swim really hard and you get to the other side and you go, okay, that was the right move.
That was it.
Right? That was it. Although you wouldn't have known it with anything on paper or anything else. You have to know it from here. You have to know it from your heart. And so there's been so many times throughout my life where I've taken on something that feels too big or feels like, ooh, that is like in a place that is out of my comfort zone or whatever that is. And all of those have really come together in this job. And it's interesting because this particular job, I have the corporate side, I have the government side. I work with government quite often. I'm able to continue to fight human trafficking, an issue I feel very strongly about. I'm able to still work with, developing nations and refugees and all of these global and local and community issues that I'm able to see from every perspective, because doTERRA is so cool that it really, from the very beginning, realized that to do it right, they had to do it sustainably.
Right.
And they wanted to give back. And so you had 7 owners that really came together and said, we're going to do this right. And we're going to move forward right. And it's 13 years later, and it's a massively successful company with over 4,500 employees. But what's more incredible is that we give jobs around the world to over 463,000 people who are farming, who are distilling, who are around these oils. And so when you're have such a pure, amazing product that people want and you source in an ethical, sustainable way, it all comes together in this really incredible place where you care about the people that are sourcing the oils and you care about how they're sourced. And so what I get to do is I get to work with our sourcing team to make sure that the projects within those sourcing regions are meeting the needs of the communities. I get to work with our wellness advocates who are wanting to do projects within their own areas domestically or even internationally. And then I also get to see really amazing work being done that I get to be a part of in anti-trafficking. We have this incredible HOPE model. And it's all of it. It's prevention and rescue and the restorative care after, and working with the best partners along the way, people like Rafa International and Dahlia's Hope, which is created after a woman who was trafficked out of Mexico at the age of 14. And she actually made her way to doTERRA and works at doTERRA.
Oh, wow.
This is a restorative care aftercare facility in American Fork, and she is amazing. She was able to escape on her own, and she at about 18 in New York City, after being trafficked by 5 individuals who she is prosecuted, and the sentencing is going on right now.
Wow.
It's amazing. And she is a feisty, smart, amazing girl who ended up marrying somebody from here, and she's still an employee at doTERRA.
Oh my word, what a story.
Yeah,
She's
it's
resilient.
incredible.
Well, I want to back up just a little bit. When you were talking at the beginning of that comment about jumping off the cliff, I was thinking about, in the short time that I've known you, what exudes from you is this boldness and courageousness. I can totally see you being like an entrepreneur tomorrow, or running for the U.S. Senate, or like something.
Wherever my heart leads.
Really, yeah, I can see you definitely. There's an aura about you that is this fearlessness, which I love. Where do you think that came from? And was there anyone in your life that exude that as well, that you followed?
Well, I would have to say both of my parents exude that. I have an artist mother who is fiercely independent, and she is just, she goes into India and jumps on the back of something, and you don't know where she's going to land, and she always lands on top. She's
Wow.
just fine, and she figures things out, and she's an artist, and she's incredible. And then I've got this incredible mountaineering father who when I was born, was a climbing ranger in the Grand Tetons, and we lived in those little ranger cabins right on Jetty Lake. And I was just a baby. I had an older sister and an older brother, and I'm told that I ran around in these little yellow jammies at the age of 1 around Lupin Meadows, right there at the base of the Grand Teton. And over the years, that became such a place for us, because after he ended up teaching school, and in the summers we were there, but he got into politics when I was fairly young and was working for Wayne Owens at the time. It was during the judiciary processes of Watergate. And as he got involved and then ran for Salt Lake City mayor, he was still living this like mountaineering, on the weekends and when he could get away, and mayor, in the daytime. And so I got to see it from both I got to see it on many different levels, where, you know, he was raised in an environment with that wasn't easy. His father died when he was 14, and he had to figure out all of that very early. But I was given kind of the gifts of what they both had and the ancestry had, and fierce people, like, you know, direct descendant out of Orson Pratt, who's the first person in the valley. And you know, I do believe that we've got this real strong community within us that are, you know, ancestors and the people that were really part of our, even before we came here. And then how we build on that. I find it so interesting as I get to know people and I get to know their histories. We always connect, always. And I know Salt Lake City is small.
Right, right.
But sometimes it's beyond that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just mind altering. Like a friend of mine who lives right through my block, who, you know, I've known his wife since college. She was my sister's age, and we're very close friends. And one day we're sitting around and he says something about Hall County, Georgia. And I said, why are you talking about Hall County, Georgia? And he goes, well, that's where my ancestors were. And I said, well, that's where my ancestors were. It turns out that our ancestors had come from Ireland and Scotland at the same time. We're the two families, the Bennetts and the Wilsons, who were in this little tiny community in Gainesville, Georgia, along a lake. And there were no LDS pioneer routes. It was just like, wait a minute. And if you looked at even how people got to Utah from there, it wasn't the standard pioneer route. It wasn't anything. And I'm here with this person thinking, how does that happen? And my dad's had the same experiences. He was after he'd gone back, he was teaching climbing in Chamonix, or actually in Switzerland. And he had come down into Chamonix at the like 30-year anniversary or something, going back. And he's sitting in a little tiny place there, and they couldn't read the menu, and he was there with his wife, and he could remember French, and so they're sitting there, and this one other couple in the room said, could we help you with the menu? And they spoke English, and but it was very Irish English, and he said sure. And so they helped him, and then they said, where are you from? And he said Salt Lake City. He said, oh, I had a Mormon pioneer grandmother. Turns out he's my dad's like third cousin.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, how does that happen when in a little tiny place, how do you find the people, right? How do you find those connections so many generations later? And I find that happens all the time. And I'm just like blown away by how connected we all are at so many levels. At so many levels.
I think that to your point, especially when you were talking about from Georgia, there's this, and I think it was Natalie Gochner I heard speaking about some interesting research about the DNA tracks of this high level of entrepreneurialism in Utah, the risk-taking nature of people that came here and then generation after generation and then marrying.
We're pretty fierce people.
We're hardy Utahns, and we're trailblazers. Well, tell me, if you were to provide some guidance to, let's say, a 17-year-old young gal who wants to be bold, who wants to be courageous. She's just on the cusp of this. How do you get to take that leap into that?
You know, well, it's first an assessment, right? I mean, you kind of have to really understand at a heart level, at a spiritual level, whatever your spirituality is, you need to really understand, is this the right move for me? And do the work to figure that out, because sometimes these leaps of faith sometimes don't lead to where you want to. I've seen that. It was really funny because my husband and I were talking about a book last night, and it's a book that everybody's loved all of these years. And he said, what do you love about this book? I said, I don't really like that book. And he said, what do you mean you don't like that book? We've had it. And I said, I think it's somebody gave it to us. And it was The Giving Tree.
Oh.
And he said, well, what is it that you don't love about it?
It's a little sad and depressing.
I said,
Shel Silverstein.
I said, because this boy takes everything from the tree. He didn't have to take everything. You know, it could have been a relationship, but instead it was a take. And I think sometimes in our youth, we get wrapped on one side of that. We either want to be the giver or we want to be the taker. And I saw that in my own youth. I loved to be the giver, right? I loved to be the one who was helping those in need, who I always found people who, were the ones that just, were interesting, I guess, more than anything, but sometimes they weren't the right people to help me for my future goals. And I think at 17, 16, 15 even, we need to make sure that we're sound enough in our own being to know who we are aligning with and make sure, because I see now a lot of situations where people are taken advantage of. People are followed. People are, there are very sad situations because of trust. And so I think first, as a 17-year-old, just be sure that you can trust who you're with. And when that trust, and you know it, you know that you can trust, and they've proven to be trustworthy.
And they've proven it.
And they've proven their trustworthiness. Then really learn from them and gain more knowledge, because you're not really ready to jump off that cliff yet, other than I look back at my teenage years and I did some really stupid things. And I just think back and I think,
if my parents knew.
My parents know now, and now they're the big joke of the family, right? I mean, riding a bus to Vegas and, things that I think, okay, in today's world,
it was a different time, though.
I would have been trafficked.
Yeah, it's a totally different world back then.
It's a totally different world. And I think, though, when we are in those age and we feel like, we are so fierce and we're not scared of things, we've got to be really understanding that, to really understand who to trust. And so I would say, first, know who you're trusting. Second of all, if it feels like, and that it is the right direction, and you've had confirmation spiritually, you've had confirmation, then trust that. And you can close your eyes and jump if you know that that is the right thing for you, but you have to know it. And I would say, and don't let anybody else no other human being be the person who tells you what to do. And I mean that in a way that there are definite guides. I myself, believe in a prophet. So all of these things, I do believe in guides. But the most important relationship I have is when I really assess and I feel to my core, to my spiritual core, that something is right. And then I know that I can do anything. Because if I have that understanding that it is the right thing to do, then I don't look back. And if I don't know that, then I'm going to look back and go, did I make the right decision? And I see this in marriage. I see this in so many things. I knew that I was supposed to marry the person I married. I could have married somebody before that person. It wasn't the right person to marry. And although I was in love with that person, it wasn't the right person to marry. When I met my husband, I was so in love with him, and I knew that it was in alignment, and I knew he was my person. That's when I got married. And so it's like you really have to understand it both logically, in your heart, and you have to know that it's the right thing to do. And if you do that, then you don't have to look back 20 years later and say, did I make the right decision? Because you knew at the time you did. And then you just work to make it better, even when it's hard.
I liked how you have brought in so many elements that are kind of checkpoints.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated your comment about your independent thought and your knowing it's right, because there are even people that you love and trust. It might be a sibling, it could be my husband. They have their perspective and their opinion and they're sharing it. And I want to take that into consideration. But in the end, it's where am I landing for sure in my heart and what is happening spiritually with me and my mind, and not being just influenced because, oh, that's my brother and I respect him so much, so I'm going to do what he's saying I should do.
Right.
Yeah. That independence thought.
That independence is really critical
for young women.
And it's made me now, now that I'm 52 and well past the age of 17, it's made me look back at those decisions that I made at 18, at 19, at 20, and say, if I made the decision right then that was the right decision, and I can own it 100%. And I think that's been really critical in my life, is being able to own my decisions and not have them be anybody else's.
And then if you're wrong, you're like, I still own it.
It's still mine.
It's still mine.
It's still mine.
Yeah, I like that. Well, in our wrapping up kind of for today, I just wanted to see, when you're thinking about what your kids, when they look at you, there's so many attributes that I see come through. And now, of course, that I'm piecing your whole family together, which I hadn't done before. What do you think your kids, what words would they use to describe their mom?
Their mom. Well, probably a bunch of different words.
Maybe let's go 3 words. What 3 words would they use?
You know, I think they would say that I would fiercely support them in any situation. I am their advocate, regardless. You know, up, down, off the cliff, whatever, I will be their advocate, and I love them more than anything. And that's where I, as a mother, it is the most important thing I've ever done. And I have worked as a mother, and I think it gets divided in people who, you know, different circumstances in life. And I'm so grateful for the mothers who haven't worked and have been in neighborhoods when my kids are home alone, right?
Oh yeah,
I just want to like,
those.
I know.
Calling, did Harrison get in the house okay?
Exactly. I'm so grateful that as I've worked, that I have had, and there was a good time of life, 10 years actually, that I worked out of my house when my kids were at ages and I was home when they were able to walk through the door. So I've had a really, really incredible process. I've, you know, of when I've been home and that, but I think more than anything, they would say that I'm fiercely their advocate.
I love that so much. I love that. And I just have really enjoyed getting to know you the last few months. I mean, it's only been, I think, maybe 4 or 5 months, but you're very, to me, this, how you come across is a very interesting, complex person in a good way. Like you have really interesting life experiences and backgrounds. I love how you're using your superpowers for good.
Well, thank you. Back at you.
It's inspiring to me, and how you're able to use a corporation, a company that you feel is so mission and purpose driven, that you can align with your North Star of your ethics and morals and where you want to be, and that you're figuring out a way to get back to this world. So thank you so much, Missy.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
I so much appreciate this, and I love what you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Well, that is it for today's We Hear Her podcast. And we would love to have you tuning in on our YouTube channel. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for taking time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.